This is Feather Dash. When I designed this build 2 months ago, I designed it with Sepazontic in mind. Ironically, because we didn't get it, we ended up finding a way to get endless evades without wasting an important aspect slot. Not to mention the weapon tempers, which are extremely powerful for Spiritborn. So this build is actually not just a speed farmer, it is now also scaling into the endgame. I used this build from level 1 all the way to Torment 4 in one stream, and it works extremely well from the very beginning. All you need is the Thunder Spike basic attack, the Eagle Spirit Hall, and boots with attacks reduce evade cooldown. With those 3 things, you can get the build off the ground and start running. No aspects required, no items required, and the only thing those are going to do for you is increase the effectiveness of the build. But even when you max out, you're only going to be using one unique. Now the gameplay you're watching is of me clearing pit 65, but keep in mind that I don't have any good gear whatsoever yet. We're only 1 day into the expansion. But before we get to the specifics of the build, if you like my content, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Every little bit helps the channel. And here's what my gear looks like. As you can see, all of my masterworks are level 4 or lower. We just barely got into ancestral gear, and most of these items are pretty bad. As you can see here, I've got fire resistance. I don't have any passives on my amulet. I'm wasting a slot for attack speed on my gloves. My pants are just straight terrible. And we're currently rocking Yen's Blessing for the all resistance. Now the key to getting our evades constantly is exhilaration. And I put this on my amulet initially because I thought I might need it. But I actually think that especially once I get a max aspect, I can move this down to one of my ring slots, and that allows me to move Unyielding up. That way we don't need nearly as much armor to cap out here. So we already know that we're evading constantly. And we're getting our evades back from exhilaration. We're getting multiple evade charges from both Yen's Blessing and our passive skill tree. That gives us a little bit of a buffer room so that whenever we're done with a fight, we can move to the next one and have some dashes left over. We're running Loyalty's Mantle, and this is doubling the effect of our Feather Spirit Hall. But in order to get this bonus, we have to run Eagle in both of our slots. We're running Disobedience for extra armor, and that's going to play into the Unyielding nicely. We're using Conceited because it's one of the few damage multipliers that actually works for this build. And as you can see, my multipliers are terrible. I only have 23% so far, and 116 out of 140 for my redirected. Even my Unyielding is only 25 out of 30. We're using Interdiction to give us a lot of block chance, and that's going to make sure that our redirected is maxed out all the time. In fact, going with a quarterstaff here might be overboard, but I think I'd still rather have the block chance here than to get a little bit of additive damage. The Yen's Blessing is really nice because every 8 seconds we're going to be casting one of our skills again that's on cooldown. And that counts for our Armored Hide, Ravager, Counterattack, and our Scourge. I usually don't bother casting my counterattack because I'd rather that bonus go to one of these other 3. And we're getting guaranteed dodges because of our rune for Concussive Stomp. As we evade, we're constantly casting Concussive Stomp, which is giving us a barrier, knocking down enemies, and it's activating our Unyielding. And our other rune word is just giving us critical strike chance. As you can see here, right now I've just got cast a skill after moving, but I would rather have move 5 meters because it's much better. But I don't have it yet, so this is what I'm using. Our Armored Hide is going to max out our resolve stacks all the time, and make sure our block chance is filled, even though we should already have 100% block chance all the time. But a nice thing about this, it also increases the amount of damage we're blocking. Our Ravager is nice because it's going to make sure that we get Potency, which is a nice passive in the skill tree. It also adds a little bit of damage to our attacks, so it's worth using. We're using Scourge to fear enemies, and we get 50% increased damage to crowd-controlled enemies. If you were going to swap out a skill in the build, this one might be your best choice. But 50% damage is nothing to sneeze at. We're using Hunter for our ultimate, but this is determined on whether or not you have enough cooldown reduction to use Devourer. So as you can see on my rings, I have Devourer cooldown reduction, but I don't have enough cooldown reduction on my rings in order for it to become really useful. You could probably fix that early by going for a 3rd cooldown reduction stat on your amulet. But basically, the Hunter is going to give you more mobility, it's going to give you stacks of ferocity, and it's going to increase your damage versus injured enemies. So it's a pretty good choice overall. However, once you can get your Devourer down to 15 seconds cooldown reduction, what it allows you to do is to stack your Supremacy up to 30. But the trick to get these stacks is to cast it every 15 seconds, because those Supremacy stacks start going down every second after the Devourer ends, and it lasts for 15 seconds. So right now, I've got a 30-second cooldown. All of my stacks will be gone before I get a chance to cast it again. So for now, I'm using the Hunter. Thunder Spike is our basic attack, and especially very early in the game before you get the build online, this is extremely important. What you can do is hold shift and hold your left click down, and you'll be using Thunder Spike constantly. Especially with some early attack speed, this becomes even better. But you don't need attack speed in the final build. But the way this works is that Thunder Spike reduces your evade cooldown by 5 seconds when you do the third attack. And this passive also makes it to where when you evade, you cast Thunder Spike. In the final version of this build, the only time that you're going to use this is if you happen to deplete yourself of evade charges, and you need to get one back so you can start chaining your evades again. As long as you have targets to hit, this usually won't happen. Especially in groups of enemies, it's never going to happen. And then we've got counterattack, which is just going to increase our critical strike damage a little bit. And it gives us a passive dodge chance. Now, we don't actually care about the points in Thunderstruck, but you have to put this many points here because there's nothing else that's useful for us in any of this area down here. So just put those points in, and you move down. We're getting that Ravager and the multiple hits. The reason we want the multiple hits is because it's going to help us stack Potent. We're getting these nice passives here, and this one especially is really good with this. It increases our dodge chance whenever we're evading, and we're evading all the time. But it's also increasing our critical strike chance. If you're trying to go Glass Cannon, you could probably pull out these points of diminishment and put them down here into Initiative. That'll give us more uptime on our unrestrained power damage. We're maxing out our Ironhide, and we're getting Reinforced Armor Hide. This is going to help us keep our resolve stacks up, which is going to scale our Colossal on our Paragon boards, and scale our damage reduction here. We've got the points in Concussive Stomp, and that's going to be cast through our Rune Word. We're getting that barrier, and we're getting that extra dodge. Not to mention the knockdown. This is going to give us more chance to block, and some barrier. This one gives poison resistance, max poison resistance, and increased healing. Our Scourge is going to be giving us that 50% crowd control damage, and it's going to give us lifesteal. This is especially important if you go for the Jakink's Shell setup. These nodes here are going to give us extra damage, and our extra evade charges. Here we've got the Supremacy for the extra damage after casting an ult, and the Unstoppable we talked about before. Like I said, choose the ult that works for you. You're going to be better off with Devourer overall, but you have to get that cooldown reduction low enough that it actually becomes worth using. And for your Keystone passive, I recommend going Vital Strikes whenever you're using a Cursed Touch. And I think this is the best option early game, but I'm not so sure about late game. I'll have to mess with this more, because it might be worth it to get an extra damage multiplier and get the 50% dex increase here. For the stats, it's going to be pretty straightforward. You're going to want to masterwork whatever stats are best. So on Loyalty's Mantle, it's going to be the damage reduction. On your chest armor, it's probably going to be armor if you need it in order to hit your cap for unyielding. If not, you could go dex here. And because unyielding has a cap, I'll probably end up going with maximum resolve stack tempers. Whenever I've had a chance to optimize this build, I'll obviously update it for you guys and make sure you got the best version. On the gloves, you'd rather have maximum life here instead of the attack speed. And critical strike chance works as well. On the pants, we want max life, armor, and dex. And again, probably maximum resolve stacks instead of the total armor. Yen's Blessing is going to be your main source of resistances, so you want to make sure you maximize that part of it as much as possible. So preferably your Greater Affix and your Masterworks are going to go there. That will allow you to drop stuff like this gem here. That means you'll have even more armor, and you won't have to worry about getting as much elsewhere. Now, all of your offensive tempers should be the Storm Feather Potency. It's very important because this is multiplicative, not additive, which is usually not found in the offensive slot. And very important on your weapon is the Primary Eagle Spirit Hall Potency. So you know how we doubled the damage of our Storm Feathers with Loyalty's Mantle? Well, this basically doubles it again. For our Amulet, we're probably going to want Dexterity, Total Armor, and Potency. I haven't actually done the math on these yet, but you can't get Supremacy here, so the only other option I could think of is maybe Apex. But again, I'll let you know in the updated build. On our rings, we prefer Dex, Maximum Life, and Critical Strike Chance. And don't forget about the Hunter or the Devourer cooldown reduction, depending on which one you're using. While I was leveling up for my Mercenary, I went with Varyana, and this gave me attack speed to allow me to attack more. But at this point, where I don't need that anymore, your better choice is probably going to be your Rahir main. But I need more time to play around with the Mercenary system before I can give you concrete answers. But for my early game, I went with the attack speed all the way down this tree here. And if you go with Rahir, you can easily go for some extra armor here, as well as some increased damage. Or, on the other side, you can go for increased resistances. This can be a way to help you hit the numbers that you need to hit in order to progress. For the Paragon boards, take these with a grain of salt because I've been leveling up and I haven't taken the time to actually make my boards. But I think I'm doing Headhunter, Jagged Plume, Fulminate, Colossal, and maybe Canny for my last one. Now the reason we're going Colossal even though it's Gorilla damage is because the multiplier that we get from all of our resolve stacks is huge. This will be far more effective than getting some additive damage in the above slot. Fulminate we're using because it does give us lightning damage, but it's not my favorite glyph. However, it gives us additive lightning damage, and that's going to play into Convergence. Convergence apparently only takes bonuses from elemental damage, and this is one of the ways that I could think of to get elemental damage. Our most important glyph is the Jagged Plume, and you can see why here. 190% Storm Feather potency. That's a huge multiplier, and we've only gotten this to level 46. Now just a note, I haven't actually tested sapping to see if it works yet, but that's what I'm using for now. I'm using Drive because we actually move so much in this build that we're actually getting pretty good effectiveness from this. Like I said, Convergence. And we've got Barrier, so Viscous Shield is probably going to be our last one. But that's it for this video, guys. I'm going to be live on stream right now after this video, so make sure you come by and watch. And I actually have one more code for a battle pass to give away, so make sure you come by for that. There's also Twitch drops active right now that you can earn. And there's an event going on where if you gift 2 subs, or subscribe yourself and gift 1 sub, you get a mount. And if you do 2 more, you get the mount armor. And my Twitch stream is twitch.tv/screamheart. I did a 30-hour stream yesterday, and we're probably going to do another long one today. So I'll see you guys there. But either way, I hope you guys liked this video. Daddy Spiritborn out.